This episode is supported by Enscape, empowering your design workflow by turning your BIM model into an immersive 3D experience. Welcome to the Troxel Podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. This is the podcast where I have a conversation with guests from the architectural community and beyond to talk about the coevolution of architecture and technology. In this episode, I welcome Jason Addy. I've previously worked with Jason for many years, and the topic of this episode gave us an opportunity to catch up after years and years of loosely keeping touch online. Jason is an incredible visual artist that previously worked inside architecture firms, including the one that I did, and is now the managing director of Neoscape's Berkeley studio in the Bay Area of California. Neoscape, as you'll hear Jason describe early on in the episode, is a high-performance creative agency that does all things visual marketing for architects and developers. Basically a high-end render house, but it's way more than that. Above all, Jason and his team are creatives and storytellers that bring a tremendous value to the table with their expertise and technology to augment architectural services, including interactive experiential marketing and branding, strategy, and more. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. So without further ado, I bring you Jason Addy. All right. Well, Jason, welcome to the show, man. It's been a long time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to see a familiar face.
Yeah, it's I follow your Instagram and your Strava, so that's how we keep in touch, right? Because we like riding bikes on dirt.
Yeah, we don't like industry specific stuff. We like bike stuff, I think, more than
right. Totally. So Jason, you're at Neoscape. Explain like the Neoscape story and what you guys do.
I've been with Neoscape technically since 2011. I've kind of worked on and off with the company. I've worked in the Boston office for a short stint for about 3 years and then moved back to LA. From there, worked at a few different companies and then came back 5 years ago almost to the month and opened an office here for them.
And here is where?
In Berkeley, California, Northern California, Oakland, San Francisco, Berkeley. We kind of focus on all of that region. But Neoscape is around, I think, 26 years old now. One of the sort of pioneers of ArchViz is the way we kind of look at the company. I had heard of Neoscape around the time that I was first jumping into Macs. You know, I'd kind of heard the name pop up, and as soon as the internet became more prominent, they were certainly everywhere. It was them and a few other key players. So I'd always kind of had an interest in the company. The company started with two brothers and a friend of theirs, Nils, and they all grew up together. And they worked in the engineering field at the time. So they all come from the background of architecture and engineering. So they had a direct sort of hands-on approach to the work from day one. And they were all doing, early sort of innovative work with visualization. They were doing a lot of ray tracing work and like 3D modeling before it was really a thing in architecture. So they quickly capitalized on that and saw a business opportunity and started Neoscape from there. I believe they had a small team of 6 or 7 or so of them for quite a while, and then they branched out and opened the New York office, and from there it's just sort of flowered. And we have an office in Chicago, Northern California. We're starting to grow in Texas a bit, in Dallas. And then in Boston, of course, is our main office.
And you guys are a service provider, basically. I know that you do stuff for architects, but give us a better understanding of the kind of clients that you work with.
Yeah, so majority of the clients we work with are architects and developers. We do everything from creative work for their films and renderings. I think that's the breadth of the company is mostly focused on rendering work, but we touch everything from branding, digital marketing, web, interactive, iPads, pretty much every aspect of marketing that you could think of inside of architecture and development. But we also do quite a bit of product work and we touch on some broadcast stuff. We have a pretty cool client in Boston that keeps us busy with a bit of broadcast work as well.
Wow, that's awesome. So give us an idea of why would an architect come to Neoscape? I mean, you guys obviously are very specialized in what you do, but what do they get when they come to you? Like, how does that work?
I think the big thing that they get, a lot of times they come to us looking for help with visuals for otherwise unbuilt, buildings or projects that they've thought about or conceptualized to some extent, or maybe even they have full drawing sets or renderings of their own that they've done, but they're just looking for better sort of marketing to put out into the public face. So they come to us. They oftentimes approach us and look for our assistance there with just creating, sort of a more refined, more personal product for them to interact with the public and also just lease and sell their spaces.
And obviously you guys do an amazing job. It is better than what they could do by themselves. I mean, just to give an idea of like our past history, there was two of you guys in the rendering department versus give us an idea of what it actually takes to do what you do at Neoscape.
Yeah, so I mean, it's largely dependent on the scope of work oftentimes, but you get a team of experts not only in 3D and sort of the visual side of things, but you're getting oftentimes it's people that have worked directly in architects' offices, or maybe they're even licensed architects. We have a lot of interior designers and architects that decide that's not the route they want to go, and they hop on board, and they might have the skill set to sort of block these things out, but we can sort of mold them and train them up to really create appealing marketing imagery. So, I mean, you get a wide range of skill sets. We have a whole film team in our office that if it's a video that you're looking to do, we have producers, DPs, people that are very specifically trained in video work for those types of projects. And then we have a whole development side now for apps and interactive work as well. So, I mean, it largely, it depends on the scope of work that's coming in, but at any time you're getting a catered team sort of to the type of project that's brought to us.
Architecture firms, in my experience, try to do it all, right? They try to have a little bit of everything possible, right? Like not only from the client side as far as like the types of clients that they will service. It's like, we'll take just about any job, but also in what you provide to that client. And I remember, going back in the day, insert the little soundbite, back in the day right here. It was like,
I'm a back in the day guy. I say it a lot.
It was, you're going to hit the render button and you're going to wait a long time for that rendering. And obviously things are very different now. It's a very specialized field, and it's like you're saying, you have a film team. There is so much to understand about broadcast and film and color grading and color correction and everything that the technical underbelly of all of that stuff as well. The pipeline, the amount of data you're moving. I mean, there is so much there. So there's also like this development of new tools. I've had Twinmotion on the podcast talking about Enscape all the time. So tools that are democratizing the ability for more people to have access to making imagery. So that's kind of the other side of the scale. Like there's this highly technical, really deep, like you're talking about these really high-end marketing images. And then there's like the day-to-day, the blossoming of the ability for designers to not have to use a visualization department to do things. And when you think about like the whole gamut that is experience plus potential, why would an architecture even think about doing their own visualization, or why would they ignore what you guys are doing on the other side of that coin?
So I think that, when I think of architects doing renderings, I think of my time in-house at an architecture firm and still continuing to work with architects on a day-to-day. Architects often see a large picture of, a big functioning space. They want to see the entire project all the time is the common ask.
The widest angle lens possible. I want to see it all in this one shot.
Exactly.
That is totally it.
So we end up there a lot of times. And for us, when it comes to us, I think in-house there's a purpose and there's there's a reason for doing things that way. And when you're studying design and you're, a designer's over the Viz artist's shoulder, or the designer's doing Viz on their own, that sort of thing makes a lot of sense. You want to see it all. You want to make sense of what you're designing. So I think when it's brought to us that way, we're able to kind of interpret it differently. We have the time to kind of go back and sit on it and really intake what we've been told about the project or the buildings, and sort of interpret it in a more sort of relatable way, is the way I like to look at it. So you
guys set a different expectation up front, because like what you're talking about back working in the architecture firm, like you guys are 11th hour kind of, like you're just at the mercy of, I don't know, like here's the new model, 5 minutes later, here's the latest model, 5 minutes later, here's the latest model, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's like, we don't have a model, but we need to fix these things, right? Like, so you're making changes on the fly, you're doing all these things, and then it's good enough, right? So Neoscape, I think, like, and any marketing centered Viz firm is thinking about how they can take all of these details and spend more time on sort of that final, whether you're still in schematic phase or, construction docs or whatever, we take whatever you have, tell you that we need, it to be sort of locked in. We can
update
things.
I'm
right?
laughing. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're laughing. Everybody's always laughing at that.
Yeah, right.
But yeah,
no, really, final.
Yeah, we need no more models, right? Yeah. We can basically take whatever you give us and refine on top of that and give you sort of a more complete version of that with the gaps filled.
Yeah, and I would assume, I'm kind of putting myself into your shoes, but I assume you guys bring a perspective to this that is very different from that I've got to see it all in this one view. Like, there's definitely been a shift in perception over the years of how much renderings cost. Because of these new tools that I just talked about, renderings are basically free now. And they used to be like, no, you got them at the end of DD and that was it. And somebody would say, where's my updated renderings? And you'd be like, you didn't pay for any, right? And it's not in the budget. That's very different. But that's a very different thing, I think, than what you're talking about, because now you're talking about delivering this service that comes along with all of the expertise that you guys bring to the side of the table in the form of, additional design, obviously, but there's all these other things that layer on top of that. It's like how this rendering makes you feel, what's the story you want to tell, what's the story arc that you want to take somebody through. And you guys are focused on that whole thing. And I'm sure there's some kind of a menu to that people can kind of pick and choose from. But at the same time, you guys have your own reputation at stake when it comes to the stuff that you deliver, and there's got to be a quality level that you hit. And so therefore it's got to include certain ingredients, and I'm wondering, like, are some of those ingredients just like they're part of everything that you do, or is it different than that?
Yeah, I think, there's definitely like a kit of parts, so to speak, that you can start with and you can offer people. It's largely sort of, you got to kind of be able to read the project and the client up front. I think it's, if someone comes to you and says, like, we have a budget of, X number and we can't go over this, but we want to tell the architecture story, you try not to overthink it. You just focus on the quality and sort of the moments within the spaces. There's oftentimes the ask for a day in the life film. That's sort of that's something that Neoscape's done for a long time, and then we continue to sort of refine as camera gear and technology gets more accessible to us. We can put together full lifestyle films that integrate neighborhoods and sort of communities and things into these projects. So I think that yes, there's a sort of starting point, and there's always like a kit of parts to be pulled from, but we always try to take the outside of the box route. Like for instance, I had a client meeting this morning where we pitched a creative on a film project. It's a life science project, in a suburban area. It's got tons of features, outdoor features, and all these sort of standard sort of lead this, lead that. It's got all these like architecture things that they want to talk about, but you got to think that there's always supporting collateral for this stuff. Mm-hmm. So we try
you don't have to tell the entire story with this one piece of media.
Right. So we can give you that kit of parts, and we can start there, and we can do all these like standard things that you've seen a million times in a real estate film. But for instance, on this one, we found that, there's all these outdoor moments. There's like these pathways through gardens and like medicinal gardens and like these moments that are really impressive around the architecture that shine like specifically through the trees. You can see the architecture. So we thought about it, in like a more filmic sort of way where we're going to frame it. It's all about like things like the aspect ratio, right? We're using like a 2:3:5 like format versus a 16:9 format. That
cinematic.
It immediately gives it a different feel. It makes it feel high end and cinematic. And then things like, the lighting in the scene, like keeping it like really natural and not forcing everything to feel very bright and sort of overexposed and things they go a long way. So you can tell the same story, but not try to cram in all the sort of nuances and numbers and stats and things that you have in all this other information that you've already created for the project.
What do architects need to hear from someone like you? Like what are the challenges that you guys struggle with when you're working with architects, and what
glass has reflection?
Transparent trees, no more transparent trees. Like what do they suck at? Because I think that this is an opportunity, because that's who you're talking to in this show. Like what I would love to hear, like from your perspective, the kinds of challenges that you guys deal with over and over again that you see all the time.
I think, the most common challenge, I mean, aside from like the more obvious things like, the transparent trees and the making the glass specifically have no reflection so you can see inside and turning all the lights on, all those things are all, and we get why those things are requested. So I have like, suggestions to those things all the time. But the most common thing lately is that we get approached with some reference imagery. So someone will bring renderings or something from another company and say, hey, we really like these images. And oftentimes they're from someone like Mir, in Norway. I think they're in Norway, who does really moody, really sort of environment specific renderings. And they're awesome. They're like
you're like watching Dune looking at those.
Exactly. Right? They're the best of the best. And they represent a more personal side of these projects, but it's also, they look like that because they were allowed to have the freedom to kind of create these images. So that's the most common thing these days, is we get approached with that sort of imagery and asked to do that. But then as soon as you do it, you get pulled way back. So it's
no, we have to show exactly what it's going to look like with our own views applied to that.
And think about like, I always try to tell people, like, think about contrast in an image. Like, you don't want your shadows to be lifted to the same levels as the daylight version of or portion of the rendering, right? Like, you need contrast in an image in lighting. So oftentimes I'll try to get sign off on that stuff, like on the view selects where it's just a clay sort of white render version of everything with the glass turn on.
You pull the architect trick on the client, like
exactly on the architects.
On the architects, right? Yeah, let's go to the client and only show them the clay model because we don't want to talk about specific materials. We don't want to go down those rabbit trails of what they like and they don't like at that level. We want to talk about space, and we want to talk about volume, and we want to talk about lighting and shadow and those things. Like, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, right? and maybe I should say thanks, architects, for teaching me that when I worked in house. but yeah, I think that's the most common thing. I would say. I'd say that like architects need to be able to let go a little bit as far as like not only like the design side, because I think we fully respect what they've done design wise on all of these projects, like the time that goes into it, all the detail, all of the design intent, all of that stuff is like stuff that we understand and we're respecting throughout the process. So
you're like, thanks, we'll take it from here.
Yeah, we need that space and respect back, I think. Like, let us do our job, and
you're the expert,
and you'll get great images. That's all. That's no matter what company you go to, I think they'll give you a really kick-ass rendering if you just let them do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would also think that part of this answer, or at least it could be composition, it could be image making, right? Like there's definitely, like, those are not the kinds of things that are actually taught in architecture school. So I tend to see that, and maybe I'm just tooting my own horn here, but as a photographic enthusiast, I have a different eye for composition than somebody who doesn't do photography or anything like that. So I've got to imagine, like, most of the views that you talked earlier about, you've got this general sense of this overall complex, and a lot of design happens at that level. And so therefore, like, that tends to get like rutted deeply into the mind of the designer. It's like, this is how we see the project, but it's not how somebody's going to actually experience the project. And so I'm wondering, like, do you fight a battle there too a lot of times when it comes to actually picking views that make sense to communicate design to people who are not the architect in the end?
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, I think one of the things that I always say up front to our clients and our partners is that you want these cameras to be eye level or at eye level so that people are experiencing your space and these images when they look at them. Every time you float a camera at 20 feet and move it back from the building, immediately disconnects you from the space that you're looking at. So like, if you really truly are trying to convey sort of a relation to your design, which is what marketing images should do, right? They should
try to put them there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's number one thing is keep the cameras low and at eye level and immerse yourself into these spaces. And then second, we try to frame it with sort of little moments of things happening within these spaces. So if you're in that like medicinal garden, for instance, that I mentioned, you want probably some butterflies like floating over the plants, or pollinators and things like.
Always, yeah.
Like that
Always
sounds
butterflies.
It sounds so ridiculous, but like if you paint in a couple kids like experiencing this moment with these like pollinators over the focal point of the plants to the left of the image, and then in the dark sort of shaded canopy on the right side, you have people reading a book or something. There's these moments that like
you can experience, you can think of yourself being there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've seen that before. Yeah.
Right. And it's weird that architects don't think of that, because nowadays you're flying around in a 3D model while you're designing a lot of times. And it kind of blows my mind sometimes that people aren't seeing more of this while they're in Revit or Rhino, whatever they're designing in.
Because, or like when they're going into VR, right? But I think a lot of times an architect is in there experiencing it, and it is immersive. Like you said, like you're in a real-time rendering environment, you're looking at this stuff, but you're kind of like going through it. And so there's like you're not inhabiting that space. You're not taking time to do the thing that people are going to take the time to do in those spaces. So maybe there is a bit of a disconnect there.
I mean, that might be maybe that's my suggestion to designers is put a camera in a space and sort of frame it how you would use the space. Maybe that'll help you
hang out there for a little while.
Hang out there, yeah. Hang out there, have a beer, and look at your screen. Relax.
This is an apt description of the metaverse, I think we just heard.
And there is no relax in designers' lives.
Right. Yeah. What does that mean? Well, so yeah, that's interesting to think about. So I know you've been talking a lot about rendering, but what else is there? I know there's other stuff that is more immersive, that is more interactive, and that, like, what are the other kinds of media that you guys are engaged with that you're helping tell the stories? And maybe we end up, talking about storytelling as a bigger concept. But what are some of the ways in which you're using technology to do that, and how that's influencing architecture and design? I'm wondering, is there like a handshake or a feedback loop going on between, like you said, we'll just take it from here, you'll get great images like that. That's kind of a one-way, disconnected way. But I'm sure there's some like feedback loops that are happening too, on top of the different types of ways that technologies that you're using to communicate how space feels and how it looks.
Yeah, I think, Zoom alone has brought, like, it's such a ridiculous sort of technological thing to mention, but it's like, it's made it so that we can just pop into meetings. We don't always have to be in person with someone. It allows us to kind of, in between formal reviews, just I'll message a client, I'll message our partner and be like, hey, I got something to show you. Like, do you have a few minutes later in the day? And, we'll show them iterative stuff within 3D Studio Max, which is something like most people for a long time, you didn't even know what we were working in, right? Like, people heard of Max and heard of V-Ray and Mental Ray and all these things, but they never saw it. So now they're able to see. Like, I find it super valuable to get people sort of involved in what we're doing and show them the tools that we're utilizing. And one of the things that's been really great outside of or within Max is V-Ray RT. So like, Chaos Group's been putting a lot of attention into just building that and making it work with a lot of different graphics card and GPUs. So you don't have to have these like super computers to make it work, and really like see something that's valuable, like quality wise within it.
Mm-hmm.
So we can, we could have a fully loaded scene with force pack and billions of objects within the
It's
scene
incredible.
plants, and then run RT and move the sun around. And, we could literally have a designer over our shoulders for a few minutes over Zoom and get approval on it and then move forward. That's been a huge part of the workflow that's helped us out a lot. I think real-time software, like I think Unreal and stuff is all a different beast. I think we use it in a different way here. We don't use it for designing as much. RT though and V-Ray has been super killer, and I know most rendering packages now have it as well, like Corona and all the newer ones come with a very similar sort of progressive path tracer system. But it's super invaluable to have that tool and just be there with someone and to let them see what you're doing. And also when you get asked a ridiculous question like, can you just pull the building up 20 feet, you can show them that no, it doesn't work like that. Like, let me show you what that takes real quick, and let me isolate all these things and pull verts around and show you that it's going to take my team some time to clean all that stuff up.
Yeah. So beyond the 2D output, like you're talking about, like the tools that you're using to produce that, like eventually it ends up with an image or a fly through or something. What else is there? What are you guys doing? We've
been doing more and more sort of leasing center LED walls, like big interactive screens in leasing centers. I think developers are putting a lot more money and time into their leasing centers. They're finding it really valuable to bring potential tenants into these spaces, sit them in front of these big digital walls or interactive tables we've done a few times, and let them sort of experience the marketing material. It's not just sending postcards or showing print collateral and flipping through a book anymore. That's certainly part of it still that will never really go away, because there's this tangible thing that you can sort of feel at the same time. But sitting in a leasing center, we've been doing a lot of Unreal tours. So they're like self-guided with an Xbox controller where you can change materials, you can move things around, you can bump into objects while you're sort of in this space. And we find that these digital walls do the same sort of thing that like the Oculus headsets and all that stuff were kind of trying to do a few years back, where you feel like you're in the space enough, right? You're actually in a sort of white boxed version of what the space could be. And then on screen, you're seeing this fully built environment around you. And, not only on sort of a 2D sort of plane in front of you on a screen, but we've done a lot of stuff with a company called Igloo, where it has a screen that sort of wraps around you. You sit in a darker environment so that you're super immersed, like in the space that you're looking at. And, from there you can do anything with it. Any of these like platforms that we're talking about, like the screens, the headsets, all that stuff, you can use the same software. So Unreal, we use it a lot for this stuff, where it just ports into whatever the medium is that they have available to them, and we cater around that.
That's awesome. So it's kind of like a cave kind of environment. And to me, it would seem like the upsides to that are you can have multiple people in there at the same time having a conversation face to face, like real physical analog face to face, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And they can be talking about the design and experiencing it together. I think that's one thing that's kind of missed in a lot of these scenarios is it's just like you're so siloed off. It's just you experiencing the thing. It's so different experiencing it with other people.
Right. Yeah. And if you know that you have a specific type of tenant coming in, like let's say, it's one of the big player tech companies, we can cater those spaces to their aesthetic and what they're looking for. So as soon as they step into this space, you could be like, here's 3 different options of this office build out, based on your other offices or what we took, cues that we took from, your previous offices that you've designed yourself. So they could sit in the space, click buttons and turn things on and off and change the space to their liking, customize it on screen, so to speak.
Let's take a moment and talk about the sponsor of this episode. Enscape is a leading real-time rendering and virtual reality tool for the global AEC market. It plugs directly into your modeling software, giving you an integrated design and visualization process. With Enscape, you can render in real time and walk stakeholders through your rendered model with incredible ease. Now buildings can be experienced long before they're built. And I have to add here that it's fun to use. Seriously, you cannot underestimate this. It's what makes this tool so amazing. This is something that most CAD and rendering programs can't claim. It democratizes your ability to create beautiful renderings at any time during the design process and use it as a tool to make valuable decisions during design. And as my friend Clifton Harness of TestFit says, it's one of the few well-established companies open to innovating in AEC. And you can see the outcome of this, where his company recently showed off how they were able to take advantage of the new Enscape SDK to incorporate the real-time renderer with TestFit. More than 200,000 unique monthly users from over 150 countries use Enscape to envision better designs. Don't be left out. To learn more or sign up for a free 14-day trial, visit enscape3d.com/TRXL today. That's enscape3d.com/TRXL. Do you guys do any kind of like an analysis of the kinds of things where, like in a leasing center, where actual end users are going to be using whatever they end up choosing, building it and using it? Do you guys do any kinds of like analysis to the kinds of things that they gravitate to or stay away from during those kinds of presentations, and then give that feedback back to the architect? Because it seems like there would be a lot to learn right there.
I don't know that we've done a lot of that. I think there's a lot that could be taken away. Yeah, certainly. I think that there's a personal level of interaction at that point that you get back from someone that's not that you don't get from just looking at a 2D rendering or
right.
But no, I don't know that we do anything like that. We do a lot of sort of digital collection on data and things like that on the back end, but that'd be an interesting concept.
It seems like you guys might have, because you are so involved in making it look the way it looks and making it feel the way it feels. There's kind of an extra layer that you guys have applied that people would just very much react to, right? Or either in a very positive way or potentially in a very negative way, or you're talking about moods and feelings and emotions that you're trying to create. It seems like there would be a big opportunity there, and most architects don't even get there, because as soon as the building's done, like, they're on to the next project. They're not actually watching how people use that space, which was a design, which is all a hypothesis, a prototype, right? Every custom building is a prototype. So it's like, we think they're going to use it this way. Now, how are they actually going to use it? It seems like you guys are actually one step closer to that because of the hyper realism that you're able to create before the building's even done, and potentially make decisions based off that from a design side to make it even better.
Yeah, I think, as soon as we get to the point where we're putting the headsets back on and people are immersing themselves into these spaces a bit more, I think that's still not quite there. And I think people get lost in putting it on and get distracted by things. But I think as soon as you can get somebody to that level, I feel like that's when you're going to get a lot of that valuable information back, because that's truly as close as you're going to get to being in the space itself, right?
Yeah, before you actually build the thing, for sure.
Yeah, you can you could have, what was that movie, Polyester, back in the day, where it was like smell-o-vision on the screen. Right. You could start doing stuff like that, where you walk by leather chairs or something and you have like little hints of things happening, and someone's like, "Oh God, I can't stand the furniture in this place because it's all leather." It'd be funny to get reactions like that out of people.
It would. I remember doing a VR thing at work, and it was this we brought in a group of who were going to end up being like stakeholders in the project, and we're showing them another building that we had done, and this guy's an older gentleman, and he puts the headset on. It's like, there's this video online called The First Follower, and it's really interesting kind of study in behavior and culture. But there's a band playing up on the stage, and they're out in the field, and like the grass field, in the super cheap seats. And one guy gets up and starts dancing, starts going crazy, but like no one's joining him. And it's not about that person. Like, that person obviously has guts, or maybe they're just wired a certain way to do that, right? They don't care what anybody else thinks. But the next person who comes up opens the floodgates for everyone to join in. That's what this guy was in VR. He put the headset on, and he was the perfect person, because he's looking around and he's just like vocalizing everything he's feeling. And he's just basically breaking down the barriers of, this is fun. So he's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And he sticks his head through a wall, right? Like, because you can, right? He can't do that in the real world. He sticks his head through a wall, then he pulls it back. Then he sticks it through again, then he pulls it back. Right. And it was just like this really fun thing to actually witness happen and break down the barriers, because as soon as he was done, everyone wanted to do it.
Right.
Right. And they wanted to experience it at that point. And I think technology adoption's hard, but people like that make it easier for other people to want to get in there and see what it's actually like.
Yeah, and that's an interesting way to look at it, and a kind of a cool reference, because it brings back this recent project that I had where I was in the space while they were giving a tour and testing out the technology that we were installing. And there were so many people laughing and joking and having fun with the product and like the visuals on screen, that it was a way different vibe as far as like when you sit in a room and watch a film, you get a lot of reactions, but you also get a lot of people that fixate on the music and just can't get away from it. And they're like, that's all you end up talking about. When you're like, nobody ever likes the music, right? So that's always all the other work just went unnoticed. But then as soon as you get this interactive thing in front of people, and they're using this controller and moving around and changing colors on the floors, and there's like ambient noises as you turn to the right, there's like birds and you can hear the ocean off in the distance. Everybody sort of gets involved in it. And it's exactly what you were saying, where it's just more fun to deal with it and look at it and interact and be a part of it. I think it's less work for everybody it's more work technically, but it's less work when you're there in person to kind of sell someone on these things.
That's an interesting thing. I mean, I've focused on that a lot in my career, which is like all the technical specs are taken care of. Don't worry about those. How does it make you feel? And let's focus on how it makes you feel. And that to me is where like you guys really shine, because you are adding these other layers on top of the thing that technically meets all the requirements, all the input that somebody's already given. They've done the design. It represents all of the intent of everybody who is a stakeholder who agreed. And okay, those boxes are checked. Now, how does it actually feel? And you guys are adding look to that, but you're also adding sound and sound design and score, like all of those things that add to the experience to really sell it as a mood or an emotional experience.
Yeah, totally. And the technical things that go into that are kind of interesting too, because there's a lot of like, if you don't have trees moving, if you don't have shrubs blowing in the wind, if you don't have fabric that looks real as you pass by it, all of those things,
it just pulls you right out of it.
Right. Yeah. It really has been for a long time. It's been a technical sort of hurdle for this industry in general. There's motion capture that's always kind of been there, but it's always been 3D people with big shoulders and walking very strangely on screen and that sort of thing. But now you have tools like Anima that have these 4D people where the 4D is what they call them. Their hair moves, their mouths sort of move a little bit. Their fabric on their shirts twists and kind of bunch as they walk around. So that stuff has all really allowed us to sell these spaces that much more, to people that are looking at it for the first time. And blowing trees, like Grow Effects is a huge plugin that we use, and being able to like build custom trees and animate them without vertex painting and doing all these crazy like side steps, that we used to have to
techniques.
do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like back in the day, we used to do all that.
Back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, those things are huge. TieFlow is another pretty cool tool that's being used a lot.
I used to use Onyx Tree with
Onyx.
What would they call it? Like Onyx with Storm or something like that.
Yeah, Storm was the animation of the wind and stuff. Yeah, I think that's still around. It might be it's mostly for gaming, but these tools have all come a long way. I think like particle things like particle flow and stuff being replaced with TieFlow, like PFlow, is all kind of transformed into this TieFlow tool, and you can do hard surface animation. You can do all kinds of it's kind of trying to do what Krakatoa does on the more higher end film side of things, but that's allowed us to do all kinds of custom things, like Middle Eastern projects where there's these sort of fabrics that you get on every person has this interaction that has never really been there if you show them with a static 3D person. So we did a project recently where we took Tyflow and really animated everybody's garment to sort of move around and shift in crowds. And like,
it's amazing how much work goes into just making that stuff blend into the background so that it feels real, so that it doesn't take me out of the scene.
oh yeah, I mean, it's all the stuff you see in feature films put into an architectural film, really, at this point.
So is that where most of this development's coming from? It seems like it's coming from two places, like the cinema side, the VFX side, but also the gaming side.
Yeah, I think definitely it's all kind of encompassed architecture now, and there's been versions of these tools and scripts and things that were only film or gaming specific at one point, and now they're all industries have hands on them. They can get a hold of them.
Interesting. Well, give us an idea of what your tech stack is like. Like what I want to get an idea of how complex it is, or like what's the kind of data you guys are dealing with? Let's just a typical job. What's it like from a Neoscape point of view? How you would tackle that?
You mean as far as like a workflow type thing? Yeah. Usually it's kind of all started the same way forever, and no matter where you work, where you get a set of drawings, a mood imagery, things like that from a client. Kick it off with a sort of interactive intake session where everybody kind of gets involved and speaks their piece about the project, and we just sort of listen. We go back and listen. We always come back after that with a sort of pitch to the idea or the creative of a project, whether it's just renderings or a film or interactive. We always come back with something where it's our idea of, or our interpretation of what we were just told. And then we start moving into the 3D side or the film side of things. So, any given project, I would say, is moving gigs and gigs of data, no matter how you look at it, whether it's textures or audio or video at this point. Everything has gotten much bigger. So it's no longer, tileable square textures. We're using massive 3D scans and all kinds of data just from all mediums. So any given project is very large, whether it's just renderings or a film or, like I said, interactive at that point. We have a pretty solid infrastructure in-house. We have, I think, about 100 render nodes these days. So we're one of the only companies that has a large render farm in-house. Neoscape's always sort of prized themselves on having this in-house render farm. It's grown from, I think when I first started in 2011, it was about maybe 40 or 50 nodes. So as new generations of hardware come out, or GPUs and things like that, we upgrade, and it's slowly grown. But yeah, we have 100 dedicated nodes, and then at night, everybody puts their machine on the farm. So I think we're probably at something like 140 or something at any given night, where we can render constantly all of these jobs that come in.
Wow, that's incredible. So what are the apps that you're excited about? Or, just give people an idea of what you use, what you're excited about that's coming in the future or the near future.
Yeah, I think the obvious one is really the progression of Unreal. And like, I think real-time technology is hard not to be excited about. We've been excited about it forever now. I feel like we all kind of we keep going in circles. We're like, oh my God, it's the new thing, right? Like but now there's ray tracing in it, and there's no need to bake all these things, and all the work that used to go into sort of prepping to get it into these environments is now more truly real time, where you can bring in the objects, apply materials, apply lighting, and it ray traces. If you have the GPU to handle it, the CPU to handle it, it'll do its job. You can build around the software packages, and it's really exciting to see the quality that people are getting out, not only in a living room scene, because that's what we all kept seeing forever, right? Everybody would do a walkthrough in a living room.
Got that furry rug, right?
Yeah, exactly. Look at all these polys all in the rug.
Right.
But now you can, there's entire cities. We did a really big project for Hudson Yards in New York, where we built out basically the entire city, where you flew from one tower down through the city, experienced I don't know the name of that big sort of staircase sculpture.
Oh yeah, I can't remember what it's called now. I would have been able to if you didn't even talk about it, but I lost it.
Well, so it flies around that. We modeled that entire thing with people, moving trees, birds, all kinds of stuff. You fly all the way around that and into the observation deck of this project. And
the pointy one up above it.
Right, yep.
Yeah.
And all of that is in real time. All of that was done in Unreal. And the way that it operates is you stand inside of this elevator with screens sort of boxed around you, and all the walls fall off in 3D space. All the walls fall off as the elevator is moving, and the camera's moving up with the elevator, so it's all tracked in, to time with the elevator ride. And once you get to the
One World Trade
top,
Center has something like that too. I've been on that one. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like it's telling you the story as you go up, and
right.
I think you kind of burst out of it at the top or something.
Exactly. Yep.
That's really cool. I mean, it's a neat experience, and it helps connect you to what it's all about as you're there. I mean, it's amazing.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's pretty much that's the most exciting thing to keep looking at in this industry. I think that's one of those things that's not going away. It's only getting better. There's a lot of competition sort of in the field as well that makes it interesting and makes them all do better.
Right.
So that I feel is the most exciting part of the tech in this industry right now. And then on the side of that, just V-Ray and Corona and all these render engines just get better and better and make
incredible stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they really just allow the artists to do better work.
I just read about Unity purchased Weta Digital.
I saw that and I didn't know if it was a joke or what.
No, it's not. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. It was like a multi-billion-dollar deal, and there's still going to be kind of the visual effects side of things, but it sounded to me like one of the goals of this acquisition is, I mean, obviously, I think all this stuff is based on metaverse future stuff. It's like they're trying to do this big land grab. It feels like we've got to be there in the beginning. We've got to be one of the major players because we want to define it. But it seems like they want to take a lot of the tech that Weta's developed over the years and start, like they kind of had and made Unity available to everybody, is just start making that stuff available to a lot more people so that they can be creators and enable the creators like you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, that's what every company that's creating these tools should be looking at doing. I think that's going to rep their tool better that is being used. It's going to get them more attention, and the quality of the end product is just going to be so much better to allow artists to be artists, right?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about this. This is another renaissance that we're talking about, right? I think when you're talking about enabling and giving agency to artists to create with as little of friction as possible, it reminds me of this. There's a book called The Fourth Turning. A turning is 40 years. Every turning is broken down into these decades, and they're kind of loosely assigned to generations and stuff like that. But let's see, that we're in the crisis mode right now. Like it does this, it's this repeatable 80-year pattern, and we're in the crisis of it right now. But what comes next is the millennials, I think, are generally referred to in the book as the hero generation. And then the Gen Z, or whatever comes next after the millennials. I'm dating myself here, but it's they're the artists. That's what they call them. And it sounds to me like that's what we're talking about, is like really empowering people to this renaissance in art and the value of art and the meaning of art. I hope that's where we're going, because that to me sounds like a pretty fantastic place.
Yeah, and if you think of it like that, and you think back 20 years ago, I was looking at, before we got on here, I was like, I got to kind of know when I started doing this. And I was thinking about when did I start doing this? And it was about
back in the day.
Yeah, really. Over 20 years ago. And I always when I talk about this industry to people, I always have said the same thing forever. Yeah, I've been doing it about 13 years. I've been saying that for 8 years now. But
right.
Yeah, if you think about it, that long ago, 20 years ago, to your point just now, we were being more technical and kind of figuring these things out, and how do these softwares work, and how do these tools, how can we make them work in this industry? Where there's a lot of problem solving, a lot of sort of scripting that kind of assisted with it. But if you just got your hands dirty in the software, it took a lot longer to produce good quality stuff. And now, these companies and these tools are so refined that these artists are allowed to be artists. Like you're saying, this new generation, which I call the Instagram generation because that's where I see them getting inspiration. There's no forums anymore. It's all either, word of mouth portfolios on Behance or on Instagram is what I find with the younger artists. They're all so good though. Everybody's very good because they can jump into these tools, be masters of them, and they're so refined. These tools are so polished that you can quickly just become an artist. You don't have to be a technical artist all the time,
Yeah, I mean, we've seriously struggled with this stuff for so long, and it is really amazing to watch how the technology, like there's a hole that's identified. It's one thing I love about like kind of going back and looking at all the Pixar movies. You can see the thing that they wanted to tackle for the new film. So for one film, it was water, and for one film, it was fur, and they've got all these different kind of environmental constraints and what are they doing with the characters and the faces and there's so many different things there. And now to watch that stuff trickle down so that anybody can use it. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal to watch that technology shift in usability change because it shouldn't be that hard to use. Like that's the whole point of tools, is to leverage them for better. And if you can, the bigger the lever you've got to make the outcome better, faster is just going to free up so many people to do their art. It's going to be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I think is being able to do it all in 3D now. Like you don't even need to paint really anything in 2D anymore in Photoshop. We certainly take it in and do color corrections and all that stuff, but even like the latest V-Rays and incorporating all kinds of new sharpening and blur built in like to the frame buffer, you can do all of these things that you normally do in Photoshop. You can layer, you can build your passes, you can do all that stuff in the frame buffer. So out of 3D, you get really like pretty impressive stuff.
Just straight off.
Just straight out of it. Trees, plants, all that stuff is all in the packages now. Back in the day, we used to paint everything in Photoshop.
Right.
You used to render a base plate with a ground texture, paint it all in. So now I don't feel so bad, with asking people to make changes on my team and stuff. I feel they're all going to hate me after they listen to this, but I know what went into creating it back in the day. So now I'm like, you can do it. You can make these small changes and then just re-render the whole image. You don't need to repaint it all in Photoshop. It's like, it might bite us in the butt sometimes doing it this way, but when file sizes get massive and you deal with files that won't open or corruption and that sort of stuff. But that certainly has helped progress the quality of these images a lot.
Yeah. I just made the case for why I'm right, and it's on a podcast, so it's true. So go back and listen to that. And
yeah, right. Move forward. Yeah. Skip to this part.
Skip ahead. Well, man, this has been a fun conversation. Is there anything else you want to tell the audience about what you guys are doing at Neoscape? I know you've got this cool R&D thing. Actually, we should probably talk about RadLab.
Yeah,
what you're doing there.
Yeah, RadLab's is something that started maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think, at the company. It really has sort of allowed a group of it's sort of a committee right now that is a part of it, but it's basically our R&D department. We call it RadLab. They're looking into all kinds of new software packages, all technologies, all how we can integrate it into what our end product is specifically. But things like working with Epic Games on how architecture directly gets into Unreal is something like that we focused on with RadLab for quite a while. And that those sort of relationships come through that environment with RadLab, and I think that it allows Neoscape to kind of stay on the edge of technology. We're always thinking about how we could do stuff slightly different, because let's put it this way, like every Viz company is doing the same thing. We're really all creating the same products in the end, but it's how you sort of think about the future of what we're doing that dictates where those stories and where your end product's going to end up. So that's why RadLab is here at Neoscape. It's one of those environments that sort of allows us to really play around with anything from 2D Photoshop. Maybe it's Photoshop replacement that we're looking into, or it's different free scripts online that are just being opened and dug into and reconfigured to be what we need them to be, or it's full software packages with new technology that we're looking into. It's one of those ventures that we've taken that have introduced new tools into our space eventually after some testing. We have a full motion capture set up in our green screen in our Boston office now, or we can put people in suits. And if you need custom actions, if you need someone golfing or playing soccer or something, we can certainly do that for you. And that was a test that started inside the Rad Lab.
So how much custom development stuff are you guys doing in-house as far as software goes?
So as far as software goes, we don't do like software packages and like full robust sort of.
Yeah, but more like scripts and plugins. And I'm sure you guys have to do a lot of custom stuff because it just doesn't exist or you don't have access to it. Like it seems like this is happening in the architecture industry. Every architecture firm is developing scripts and things for Grasshopper or for Dynamo, for Revit or whatever. And everybody's doing the same freaking thing in every different office because they're not willing to share it or open source it or whatever. I assume it's probably not too different for you guys.
No, not at all. And that's one of those things where Nils, one of our founders, has always had his hands into scripting. There's always been Neoscape scripts floating around the internet. That was some of the OG scripts that were on ScriptSpot were from Neoscape, you know.
Shout out to Chris Grant for ScriptSpot right there.
Yeah, Chris Grant taught me a lot. I'll say that. I learned a lot from him as far as this industry goes. But yeah, we definitely we develop a lot of scripts in-house to help our pipeline. Really, they're called click eliminators, right? Like it's things that take
automations. Yeah,
exactly. It's like if it takes you 5 minutes to do one thing, like why not put it in a script and just run it? If it's a common thing that's done across the company, and we have a script loader that you can just pull them all down, and all the scripts that have been utilized over the years can be put in there or in there already.
I'm just giddy to say Photoshop Actions. Remember when that happened back in the day?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Click savers. That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yep, exactly.
Well, man, this has been fantastic. Where can people see what you guys are doing? And I will include all the links in the show notes, but I would love it if you could tell the audience the kinds of places they can go visit, follow you guys online, see what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, we're all over social media now. So Neoscape's Instagram is pretty active. We post rendering of the week. We have highlights on employees. We talk about industry things. It's a good place to kind of go get a high level of what's current and going on at the company, but also, our website, neoscape.com, and our LinkedIn page is also pretty active. From all those mediums, you can get to our Vimeo page. We have a brand new West Coast reel up that's pretty cool. I would suggest everybody go check that one out. That shows a breadth of our film work across the West Coast right now.
If you were to give some younger folks some advice who are interested potentially in getting into this industry, and I would even love to hear it if you are doing anything to actively engage like those kinds of people from a educational standpoint. Like what are you leaving for the next generation to build on? But how are you engaging them now? And what advice would you give them to kind of come into the visualization side of things?
Yeah, I mean, actively we're a part of internship programs at a lot of different schools and a lot of different communities throughout the United States, wherever we have offices. So that's one of the main things that we're doing. We do a lot of outreach. We go to events, job fairs, and things at these colleges, and let kids sit down with artists or people that work at Neoscape and have a conversation with them. So that's something that we do a lot of and have done for years. Personally, I was teaching a class at CCA in San Francisco, and it was an architecture specific program, but my class was focused around sort of storytelling and the Viz side of things, because I find that I get a lot of questions from architecture students that are like, hey, how can I get my hands more into the Viz side of things before I go work as a designer somewhere? So I was teaching them, storytelling and really sort of focusing on the things that are that don't have anything to do with architecture. Like look at photography, look at film, look at, really get into the technical aspects of how you take a photo with even your iPhone. Like, what are you doing with your iPhone when you take a photo?
Put it in manual mode.
Put it in manual mode, fiddle with the dials. That is the biggest head start you can get on ArchViz, in my opinion, because everything's so photographic now, and all the cameras are all physical cameras. You're all dealing with the same settings that you deal with on a real camera. So that's like the number one thing I tell people is to really sort of broaden your range of what you're looking at, and if you're into architecture and you're going through an architecture program, step out of it for a little bit and get into these other things. If it's gaming that you're into, a lot of the same things apply. Like look at how things are composed on screen in a HUD or in a game, and all that stuff applies to the same storytelling elements that we do on a daily basis.
I feel like every architecture firm should create and offer, or at least band together and make an image making course to teach their staff how to at least get halfway there before they hand it off to experts like you guys, because they are creating those free renderings every day in tools like Twinmotion and Enscape, and there is a lot of information that needs to be communicated, and it can be taken to the next level just through composition and camera placement and like understanding the basics of how cameras work, I think.
Right. Yeah, no, that's huge. I think like understanding composition and all that stuff is basic stuff that should be taught or should be allowed to explore within architecture.
And not just expect people to know how to do it, because they don't.
No one.
Like it's just not. No one's born with that. You gotta learn it.
Yeah, unless you grew up around, your dad's a photographer, or your parents are a photographer. Like that's just stuff you don't pick up on until you can afford to get your hands on a camera of some sort and do it on your own. It's really hard to learn.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time watching a professional photographer in a studio, and all of the things that went into creating one photograph, like one image, like in camera. Lighting and reflection and shadows and all the specular highlights. And it's just, there's so much going into constructing an image that I think, at some level, it's been so abstracted from us. It's just like point the camera and save the screenshot. There's so much more to it. If you're willing to go to those levels, it can make or break selling somebody on a design for sure.
Yeah. And another thing that I often tell like my junior artists is that they need to get involved, in forums online and get involved. And I learned so much from online communities. That's how I learned everything that I know right now. Is not everything, because I've honestly had so many moments with hands-on with artists over the years that have taught me a lot. But I learned everything that kind of got my career started from free resources online. Open source stuff is all over the place. There's so much information online that you can, if you just dig into it just a little bit, right now, especially the internet's flooded with info on all this stuff.
Yeah. It's the best time to find a teacher you like. I mean, there's so much of the same content everywhere. Spend a little bit of time finding somebody who you really connect with for any reason that you want to pick. And that's huge, right? There's just, like you said, there's so much available. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, YouTube's paying people to give you great content for free. So get on there and get involved.
Right. Well, thanks, man. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. It was good to see you.
Thank you to Enscape for their support of this episode. Visit enscape3d.com/TRXL today for a free 14-day trial. This show is part of the Gable Media Podcast Network. You can see all the shows at gablemedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com. You can help support what I'm doing here by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help get the word out, and of course, share it with your friends. I'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment on the website at trxl.co/podcast, where you can find every episode. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. Just search for eTroxel. Talk to you soon.